And you're welcome back to What the Papers Are Saying. My name is Vivian Kayaloko. So let's take you through some of the big stories for the week. The first had to do with some school feeding caterers in the Ashanti region boycotting their services over unpaid monies owed them by government. Another to do with Codeo calling for the resignation of some newly sworn-in EC board members. And then also the third to do with the passage of the new taxes. So let's start with the school feeding caterers and see how the various media outlets capture that story. So we start with the anchor, and it says school feeding caterers withdraw services. We move to City Newsroom. Go and cook, you'll be paid soon. School feeding secretariat begs caterers. City Newsroom again. We will lose our jobs if MPP loses 2024 elections. School feeding caterers. We still stay with City Newsroom. They've got some other angles to the story. This one says 3 billion Ghana cedis needed to sustain school feeding program, EduWatch Africa. And then also Ashanti Regional Minister kicked us out, angry school feeding caterers lament. And finally, on the school feeding issue, we have Ashanti Regional Minister justifies kicking out school feeding caterers. So that's how the story to do with the school feeding caterers was captured. Let's go to Codeo versus the EC board members and start with the daily graphic. It says CSOs call on 2 EC appointees to resign. And then City Newsroom says Codeo calls for resignation of newly appointed board members. Another says resignation of 2 EC board members not likely to happen. This is Jampo speaking. And finally, politically tainted board members will reduce confidence in EC. Reverend Davis speaking over there. We move to the passage of the 3 new revenue taxes. Let's start with Daily Graphic. They say Parliament passes 3 revenue bills. The New Crusading Guide says Guta fights government over newly passed revenue bills. The Business and Financial Times says new taxes to make inflation fight harder. Gachi as AG warns of dire consequences for businesses. And then we have the Ghanaian Times, 3 newly passed tax bills to rake in 4 billion Ghana cedis annually. 3 newly passed tax bills to rake in 4 billion Ghana cedis annually. The Finder says revenue bills pass. Last hurdle is bilateral Eurobond creditors agreement. And then City Newsroom says LPG price hike increment over new taxes. Marketers Association warns. City Newsroom, TUC fears of more layoffs, tough times over 3 new taxes. And then City Newsroom again, excessive tax policies may heighten cost of living, Federation of Labour. We wrap up with that with Ashanti Region, beverage traders fear 3 new tax laws will collapse businesses. So these are how some of the various news outlets captured the big stories for the week to do with, one, the passage of the new revenue taxes. Secondly, Codeo coming to say that some 2 new EC board members must not be there because of affiliation to some political parties. And then finally, we have the school feeding caterers boycotting services in the Ashanti region over unpaid debt owed them. Let me bring in my guest for tonight. I have with me Richard Della Sky. He's here with us at City FM and City TV. On radio, is on the breakfast show every day. Richard, welcome again.
Thank you so much, Vivian. Honored to be here.
Good to have you and happy to have you again. We have Selam Adonu, who is also here with us at City FM and City TV. Over the weekends, on Saturdays, he's on The Big Issue. Selam, welcome.
Thank you, Vivian.
Right, guys. So I think we can start with the school feeding caterers, if that's okay with you. So this week we've seen some agitations from the caterers over. Of course, the amount they are paid currently, some few pesos, and then secondly, not being paid over a long time. Now, last year, we saw a lot of agitations across the country from the Greater Accra region moving to all, all the different regions over the non-payment and, of course, the amount of money they receive per child to take care of them. Their protest is, of course, that things are expensive now. I mean, it's a difficult period, and it's difficult to sustain the program or to cook for these children with these low amounts of money. And to compound it, we are not paid on time. Salam, let me start with you. We'll start with what we saw in the Ashanti region, where they went to, protest or to seek the audience of the minister, who also got angry, left them, and the whole thing ended in, a difficult situation, leading to them boycotting. As we speak, the children in the Ashanti region are not getting food to eat because they boycotted, the work. Your thoughts around what we are seeing?
Well, it's unfortunate. I think it is a symptom of the times, even though the issue about non-payment of caterers and the low fees they are paid is actually not new. But indeed, it's a symptom of the times we find ourselves in. Difficult economic times. Government is finding it difficult to raise money to do a number of things, including paying the caterers. But the school feeding program, I must say, is one of those social intervention programs which have been well thought through. The school feeding program started in 2005. It was one of those social intervention programs, really, which was introduced by the Pillar 3 of what we call the Comprehensive African Agricultural Development Program of NEPAD, the new Partnership for African Development. And the purpose of the school feeding program was Africa's own way of increasing enrollment and retention in schools, improving the nutritional needs of students, and also helping deal with hygiene issues. And the byproduct of these three things I've mentioned would be creating employment and then, helping farmers in the local areas have ready market for their produce and income generation generally. Helping farmers get ready market for their produce, because the purpose of the program was formulated in such a way that you use local produce to feed local schools. And so for a lot of countries which have adopted this, they call it a homegrown school feeding program, because it was to use homegrown produce. So that essentially is it. The school feeding program, has it been effective? Yes, it's been effective. It was also, introduced to deal with or to address MDGs 1 and 2, which essentially had to do with, eradicating extreme poverty and then improving universal or getting to universal primary education. Yeah. So if you ask whether these goals have been attained, largely yes, because one of the successes of the program is that it has, improved primary school enrollment, because people who hitherto could not go to school because they did not have money to feed themselves in the afternoon, so went to help their parents on their farms or in the markets, etc. Now we're assured of one hot meal a day, at least in the afternoon. So they will go to school, and some will purposely go to school because of the food. So when they go to school because of the food, they are in school, so you catch them and then teach them. So that, to a large extent, increased enrollment and a few other things. The nutritional needs of the children from the beginning was improved, because when the kids stayed at home, they did not have nutritional meals to eat and all of that. So to that extent, it was good. The problems of the school feeding program, have been there since the beginning. The problem really has to do with funding. Like many of the very nice programs we have, at some point problems of funding, arise. And when the school feeding program started, about a third of its budget was donor funded. But after a while, the donor funding dried up, and so the government of Ghana itself had to cough up money to do so. So that is where we are. One major problem is financial. The second really is partisan politics. And the kinds of people who get recruited as caterers for those programs, or this program, are often women organizers of the constituencies, regional, etc. And so a lot of the things they do, or they get chosen to do them because they are party people. So that doesn't help the program. So if a different regime comes, all of those people are sacked and a new set of people brought in.
They appear to have accepted that.
Yes, they are not necessarily they may not necessarily be the most competent. So, for example, if you're a woman organizer somewhere, at least you can cook. So immediately you get a school or you get an allocation and you begin to deliver. So that was a problem. So did the women have an issue for which they needed, some regress? Yes, they had an issue. You can't be paying, 97 pesos per child, for food in the afternoon and expect the children to be given quality food. And on top of that, you don't pay them. So for 3 terms or over about a year, they have not been paid. So how do you expect them to raise money to cook? If it were just a month or 2 or a few months, yes, that can be explained. But for a whole year, you don't pay them the 97 pesos, which in itself is woefully inadequate. You don't even pay them. How do you expect them to keep cooking? And that became an issue. So for them, their solution or their way of getting the attention of the powers that be was to picket. But I'm sure they forgot that picketing and all of those things have rules around them. When you talk about picketing and demonstration and things like that, then you refer to the Public Order Act, which requires that before you undertake such an action, you must do 1 or 2 things. You must do a few things. You must serve notice for a certain number of days, 5 days. You must do a few things. If you don't do those things, then you are in breach of the law. Yeah. So if you heard the minister, he was saying that we've pampered the people for a long time, and so they do things anyhow. The fact that you have a good case doesn't mean that you approach it anyhow. That's what the minister was saying. But was the minister's response also the best? No, the minister's response was also not the best, because when you owe people and the people come at you a certain way, you must have a way of dealing with them. Of course, knowing the minister from afar, I think he has a way of dealing with issues. Sometimes he comes across as very angry, or he does things on the spur of the moment. But when you drill down, he may not really be angry. So I think that explains how he dealt with the matter. So yes, it's not a very pretty situation. They are owed a lot of money, and government must pay. Okay. Government has said that this year, in the 2023 budget, it hopes to additionally fund the program by someone.
But can it afford this whole intervention? No, realistically,
I think it's an important intervention. The school feeding program, the National Health Insurance Scheme, and a few other social intervention programs are way more important than some of the social intervention programs we have, which are purely just meant to catch votes. So if you are thinking about rationalizing social health insurance, social protection programs, I think this should remain, and this should actually be improved. As we speak, just about 3.6 million people are on the program. I think that should increase, because there are a lot more students or pupils in rural communities who need this program, but the program hasn't expanded to them yet. So if there's a program that needs help, it is this program, because the effect and the impact of it is so palpable, and you can see it. So yes, government must find money to deal with it. Government is hoping to spend some 1 billion on the program this year. I think government must find more money to expand the program, because it is a good program.
Okay, let me bring in Sky. Is it time we got rid of this program? We are struggling to pay. Things are getting more expensive. Realistically, what we're giving the caterers is not good enough.
Thank you, Vivian. I do not think that it would be a wise thing to do to want to discard this program. I think what we do have as a challenge is the kind of leadership that will create or make the most out of the limited resources that we have as a nation, in order to set aside money to address needs like the one that these children or pupils face. Because, how much are we talking about here? And Selim has addressed the issue eloquently. We're talking about something a little above 9 pesos per child per day. We all know the cost of living in this country. Realistically, this has not been, increased for some time now. And so if you even apply the recent increases in the cost of, things in this country, you would realize that the real value of 9 pesos or so is wiped out entirely. Now, the argument is all
90 pesos.
90 pesos, yes, 90 pesos, correct. Now, the argument is often made that, well, it is not just 90 pesos being spent on a child per day, but you have to aggregate everything. And when you look at the economies of scale, you put everything together and you are cooking for, say, 1,000 or more students, then it is possible to say that, you know, that amount is not that small after all. But, I mean, I'm always pushing back on that argument because it doesn't, strictly speaking, make sense to me. Because, look, we all know the cost of things in this country. And so if the cost of things are going up, the expectation would be that there will be adjustments in how much you are spending per child. Of course, yes, when you buy things in a bulk, you expect that it helps impact positively.
Cheaper, yeah.
Exactly. So, yes, that argument can be made to a limited extent. But why is it that we are unable to pay 90 pesos per child per day? Like, it doesn't make sense to me. Because look at the amount of vehicles that ministers, government appointees use almost on a daily basis across the whole of Ghana. And tell me whether, you know, the amount of expenses that they make, the air condition they sit in their offices, the allowances that they go home with, the meetings that are attended and the per diem that is paid. Are we saying that we cannot find 90 pesos per child per day in this country?
They want an increment to 3 cities, I believe.
That is not far-fetched. I believe if you look at how the value of our currency has been wiped out by, as they have often, you know, argued, coronavirus
and the Ukraine
war. You understand? And related domestic, you know, irresponsibility. I would use that term. It would seem that it is a good case to be made that there has to be an increase. Now, it is not enough to increase. You must find the money to pay.
Yeah.
And I do not believe that a country that discovered oil, and we were told that, look, when we started the production, commercial production of oil, we were going to make a lot of investments in our kids. At the educational sector, we receive a huge chunk because we are expecting to create the right human resource to lead the future that we seek to create.
Yeah.
And we are saying that how many years down the line, we cannot find money, despite all the sources of resources we have, to be able to pay these children and make sure that the people assigned to cook for them are able to do
But
it. I think it is a major indictment on the government of the day, and completely unacceptable.
Government has had challenges paying them. I mean, this thing started the last term of Kufuor's last year, after which we've run it till today. Every year or every now and then, there are agitations over payment and then wanting an increase. So this runs across all governments. What is the challenge in paying? What do you guys think over the years in, you know, following this story has been the challenge in them struggling to pay and, you know, be on time to pay?
It is the issue with everything else. District Assembly's Common Fund. It's been in arrears since, you know, for 18 months now, we're told. So things have stalled in the various district assemblies. That's the argument that is made. Just recently, Parliament was supposed to sit and decide a new formula for sharing the money. Of course, the money comes in. The Constitution says when a certain amount of money comes into the state, a certain percentage of that is taken out and is committed to this fund, which is supposed to go into servicing the various district assemblies of our country. And Parliament developed the formula for doing that. But for some reason, the account is in arrears. And we are talking about billions of Ghana cedis. The road fund, of course, some payments are made here and there. But there are massive arrears sitting there. People have worked for the state, and for some reason, they cannot be paid. If you go into the various funds that are there, the various public funds that are there, I can guarantee you that the National Health Insurance Scheme itself will be sitting in huge arrears. So if you look at it, we cannot treat the, what do you call it? The school feeding program in isolation, because it is part of all these funds that are suffering. Because even the Scholarship Secretariat, which is taking care of Ghanaians in Ghana and outside the country, they are also struggling. So the question you ask yourself is, how come all of these things, regulated by law, managed by human beings we believe are the very best of us, they cannot get it right? And the most annoying aspect of it is these are kids. We have used the school feeding program to encourage them, as Telom stated, to go to school. People have had to follow their older, brothers and sisters to school because, anytime they went to school, they got food.
Yeah.
So that inspired a lot of people to send their kids to school. Now, what it means is if we cannot sustain this program, then ultimately there will be school dropouts. People will not find a need to send their kids to school again. And again, we cannot treat this in isolation because as we speak, we are told that even at the SHS level, there is a massive problem there. The money is not being sent to support the schools that are around the country. So headmasters have become serious economists. People are buying things, headmasters are buying things on credit just to make sure that the schools are running somewhat well. And they cannot talk because there is a gag order which is unofficial in the system, and if you go contrary to that, you'll be punished. I think it is unfortunate. It is an embarrassment to the people managing the various sectors which would deal with these areas. And I believe that if it has to take the president himself to intervene in this matter and ensure that these women are paid so that they continue what they are doing, that must happen. Quickly on the Minister for the Ashanti region.
Yeah. Do you think he handled it well?
It's just, unfortunate. I've known the Honorable Osei Mensah for a long time now, during his days as a member of parliament. He's abrasive like that. Yeah. But when you become a minister, I think a certain, finesse is expected of you. You should be a little more nuanced in dealing with matters like this. I remember when, Occupy Ghana and the team, of course, the group that ultimately became Occupy Ghana and their splinter groups, when they demonstrated and sought to go to the presidency under John Dramani Mahama to present a petition because the economy was in a mess. I was part of the journalists who covered that demonstration. Of course, a number of them were beaten by the police. Hannah Tete, then the Minister for Foreign Affairs, sent out a tweet that basically made nonsense of what the people were doing. But the government did not refuse to receive the petition that it had brought. I remember that it was Valerie Sawyer, the Deputy Chief of Staff at the time, responsibly went out to receive the petition that he had brought. So that came to the attention of the President of the Republic. So if these women, who are essentially party apparatchiks anyway, members of the NPP, women organizers and, all these people who play an integral part of the NPP, they have made the program a partisan one, and it's been like that since it was created. Yeah. Sought audience with you to have you address their concerns. I think it is completely unacceptable that a minister will walk off them. It does not matter, or it did not matter, that they did not seek permission, or even if you will not go and receive the petition, send somebody. You said you sent your special assistant to go and see what was happening. And then he came back to tell you that, some people, the women were demanding to speak with you and all of that. Even if it was the special assistant that you could send, do that out of some respect for the effort that they continue to make to keep the belly of the students full. You don't walk off them. And my good friend, the Honorable Minister, I think he should have done better. Is
it time to clean the program off politics? Because it makes it look like you are people and you should understand what we are going through, and really, if there's no money, just manage it. You should support the government.
Well, I wish, but that cannot happen, and that will not happen. A lot of the institutions set up post-2000, mainly by Kufuor, have suffered this politicization. We've seen it at the the National Youth Employment Program. We've seen it at the National Health Insurance Scheme. We've seen it at Maslog. We are seeing it at school feeding program, where state institutions become the the spoils for political activists. So depending on, so for example, when National Health Insurance Scheme was set up, the scheme managers and all of the people in the district became aware the constituency chairpersons of the MPP. And so when the NDC also came, the same thing was expected, and the same thing continues to happen. The same is happening so district managers, etc., became, constituency executives became district managers, etc. Now, school feeding program becomes the thing for the women. So women organizers, etc., become the coordinators for the school feeding program. It has become an award system for political activism. I don't see it ending. And the argument they will tell you is that are they not Ghanaians? Yes, they are Ghanaians, but they are Ghanaians who have been chosen, not necessarily on merit, but because of their association with power. I don't see it ending, though I wish it will end, so that the people who are selected to cook are competent and they are selected using the right channels, using the right procurement processes. That hasn't happened, and I doubt if that will ever happen.
Okay, I have to take a quick break. This is what the papers are saying. My name is Vivian Kailoko. I'm here with Selam Adonu as well as Richard Sky. When we come back, we'll look at the Kodeo's concerns over some newly sworn-in EC board members. Do stay with us. We'll be right back.
City TV is live on DSTV. Go to channel 363. On GoTV, access City TV on channel 182. On a digital TV, please press the menu button on the remote control and run a new search on your TV. Take note that without an antenna, you cannot access City TV on your television. City TV can be accessed on a free-to-air digital box like the GoTV and Star Times box. City TV, it's your world.
And you're welcome back to what the papers are saying. My name is Vivian Kailoko. I'm here with Selam Adonu as well as Richard Sky. Now, guys, let's move to the Kodeo concerns with the EC board members. This is not new. About 2 weeks or so, when they were sworn in, concerns were raised by quite a number of people over two particular people. One, a former TESCON guy, and another, a lady who is believed to have a family very rooted with the MPP. Those are the concerns that have been raised. Now, Kodeo has also come up to say the same, and they feel that these two must resign. But you have the likes of Jampo saying that this is not likely to happen and all that. I mean, based on wanting to have an EC that is very neutral, very independent, are these concerns not, genuine ones, and time for these people to even step down without the president even intervening and say, okay, guys, get out and let me bring in new people?
You see, I addressed this matter with a heavy heart because I remember clearly that when I went to the Supreme Court in 2015 on a matter similar to this, of course, we had support from the GBA, which was also fighting its own battles along similar lines because of how appointments were made to the Supreme Court. And they thought that the constitutional provisions dealing with this particular matter have not been respected. Because what's at play, the language of the Constitution in consultation with and on the advice of. Ultimately, the Supreme Court took the view, which view is said should apply to my case, and that of Danswa Champon, if the other plaintiff in the matter, should apply. The principle should apply that, the advice of the Council of State or the Judicial Council should not necessarily be binding. Of course, if you read the judgment of Justice Atuguba, he's not as clear in terms of clearly stating the point. But if you read a concurring opinion of Justice Duche, who wrote a concurring opinion on the subject matter, he made it clear. And Vivian, with your permission, I may just want to read, an excerpt of that judgment, especially what Justice Doche had to say about the matter. So, Justice Doche said that, in conclusion, I want to reiterate the point that whilst the President is mandated to seek the advice of the Judicial Council and consult with the Council of State in appointment process of Supreme Court judges with the approval of Parliament, those advisory opinions are not binding on the President, in clear words. Now, although the cases dealt with two different things, the issues revolved around the language of the Constitution, on the advice of, and in consultation with. And if you read the judgment of Justice Atuguba, he said that the decision as made in relation to the judges or the Supreme Court should be taken to apply to my case. Do you understand? I respectfully disagree with the view that the appointment process should be such that the President can almost entirely disregard the opinion expressed by the Council of State. The reason is that I believe that the framers of the Constitution did not say we should put together elders of that size to do an important exercise of considering serious matters like this and coming to a view, which view is sent to the President for his consideration. And I've done some digging around the subject matter. And Vivian, it would seem to me that with the greatest respect to the Supreme Court, they erred in how they came to the conclusion that
why so?
Advice of the Council of State should not, hold such a heavy persuasion on the President. Because summing it up, and again, let me just read something that I've pulled up. Trying to distinguish between in consultation with and on the advice of. Now, both in consultation with and on the advice of are phrases that indicate that someone is seeking guidance or input from another person or group. However, there is a subtle difference in the meaning and implications of these two phrases. So the first one, in consultation with. This suggests that the decision maker is actively seeking input and advice from others, but ultimately retains responsibility for making the decision. Now, this phrase indicates a collaborative decision-making process where the decision maker values the insights and opinions of others, but ultimately retains the authority to decide the course of action. That is what applies to the judges. But if you go to the language of the Constitution under Article 72 of the Constitution, it uses on the advice of. And there, on the advice of, per the research that I have done, a proper interpretation of that phrase should suggest that the decision maker is relying on the guidance and recommendation of someone else to make the decision. This phrase indicates that the decision maker trusts and respects the expertise of the advisor and is willing to defer, and let's capitalize the word defer, to their judgment and recommendation. So in conclusion, in consultation with implies a more collaborative decision-making process, while on the advice of implies a more deferral relationship between the decision maker and the advisor. So in my respectful view, I believe that when the Constitution says that the President should act on the advice of the Council of State, the expectation would be that the Council of State, whatever they say, the President would, by and large, defer to that. Now, the question we should ask is, when these nominations were made and the Council of State was supposed to, review their nomination, what did they say? For some reason, the reports or the pieces of advice that they supply to the President are not matters that are put out in the public domain. And perhaps it's about time we started testing whether or not we cannot secure these documents under the RTI, provisions. Of course, I'm sure there'll be a pushback. that, you know, these should be matters between the president and the council.
Yeah.
But these elders of our state, they are paid by the taxpayer.
But what if
We
they
should
told
not be
him
hiding.
not to? What if they told him not to, and he decided to go ahead?
Aha, you see, so then that comes back to my case, which was that what? The Council of State position should be one that the president defers to on the matter. Because, I mean, how on earth can a president, properly constituted, and looking at everything that happens around elections in our country, put a partisan person on the Electoral Commission? It doesn't make sense. And I made this argument before that we will not always have good presidents. So what you have is one day the president wakes up and the wife, you know, basically did something very well overnight. And the president thinks that, okay, when I wake up in the morning, I'm nominating my wife to become the chairperson of the Electoral Commission or to serve on the Electoral Commission. Of course, the person is a Ghanaian. The wife is a Ghanaian. Satisfies the requirements. However, does it make common sense for such a person to be put on the Electoral Commission?
But you cut somebody off the Electoral Commission because the family is rooted in a particular political party.
Well,
we have families that there are two-way routes. Both the NDC a part, another the NPP or CPP or whatever. Why would you cut somebody off because my father was deeply entrenched in the NPP, for example?
You see, I think the arguments went beyond merely family people belonging to the NPP, and therefore, by extension, you are a member of the NPP.
That's of the lady, that was the argument.
No, the council, what's the name, Cordell, in their statement said that when they went through her page, they found that she had even been, or there was a campaign to nominate her as a minister or to serve in a certain political capacity under a previous.
But we are in a country where you can be rewarded because your father belonged to a party and did ABCD.
Yeah, but they don't just.
It doesn't mean you are deeply entrenched in that party.
Vivian,
isn't it that?
Vivian,
Isn't
you
that
see,
the case?
perceptions matter.
Yeah.
It is the case that when it comes to appointments to the Supreme Court, we have had general secretaries of political parties named onto the Supreme Court. I had serious issues with that. The Justice JSC Pamang is a former general secretary of the PNC. He's on the Supreme Court. Of course, he's made very fantastic decisions that I agree with. There are those that I have, some difficulty with. But the point is that, is there a problem with that kind of appointment? Of course, in the past we had Nana Akufo-Addo's father. He served on the Supreme Court. And many other people of some political coloration have gone through the Supreme Court. That is the court. People would argue that, the law will speak at the end of the day. But when it comes to an institution that is governing the electoral process, I think that we should be very measured in the kinds of people that we put on that commission, because you do not want to create a partisan commission that will bend to the whims and caprices of the appointing authority and would ultimately compromise how elections are organized in this country. Perceptions matter. Where there is a perception that this commission is partisan and does not support, the views of all fairly, then we are endangering our democratic process. So I believe that it was a wrong move. The president did not act properly. He was not properly advised, or even if he was advised, he perhaps did not act the way he ought to have acted. As a father for all of us, taking a decision that truly reflects the aspirations of the people of Ghana, as opposed to a partisan interest. I think, with the greatest respect to the president, this was a huge, huge, huge low. And he ought not have gone that far.
Okay. Selam, do you share the same sentiments as Richard?
Yes, I do, and I think I did explain.
But is there anybody clean and not belonging to a party, really?
A lot of the things we do in this world are based on perceptions, and especially so with the Electoral Commission. What the Electoral Commission needs to do well is confidence and trust. We have an Electoral Commission which is at an all-time low when it comes to confidence and trust, at least of the other bigger political parties. There are two key political parties, or main political parties in Ghana, the NDC and the NPP. As we speak, the confidence of the NDC in the Electoral Commission is about zero. to the extent that the NDC has stopped attending IPAC meetings. IPAC is such an important innovation that the parties themselves have fashioned out for themselves that helps them deal with matters which are so contentious. They meet at IPAC, they talk among themselves with the Electoral Commission. Once in a while, they invite other people to join. And that has helped us for all these years. But because of a certain posturing of the Electoral Commission in the view of the NDC, it made the IPAC no more necessary. Because according to the NDC, then General Secretary Asiru Nketia, the IPAC became like an announcement forum. You only go there and things are announced to you. Whilst before, it was a consultative process, it was a forum for discussion, so that we discuss something and then what we agree on becomes what the Electoral Commission does. Usually, even though the IPAC is not a body backed by law, they have worked among themselves and they have brought us this far. Today, that IPAC is almost non-functional because of trust issues a certain segment of, and a certain huge segment of the political divide has with the Electoral Commission. So when you have a situation where people who are clearly members of the other political party, like the gentleman, Dr. Apiahini, who is said to be a patron of TESCON, and a communications person and a party communicator in the Bono region, being appointed or appointed to the Electoral Commission, that raises a lot of issues. Because, of course, everybody votes. So once you vote, you may vote for one person or the other. You could be there in the whole NDC or MPP, but that is to you. But when it becomes public, people know that perception will affect the institution you are going there, you are taking that to. And it is a difficulty for me because we are politicizing or making the Electoral Commission partisan, and that has dire consequences. For example, the NDC doesn't believe in many things anymore. It says it doesn't believe in the Supreme Court anymore, so next election it is not going to the Supreme Court. That is a difficulty. That should make every reasonable person worried. Because if something happens, you will not go to court. Where will you go? You go to the street?
Yeah.
And is that where we want to be? Yeah. That is a problem. We need to have institutions we can have confidence in, so that don't worry, the EC will deliver. And in the past, that has been it. Everybody knew that the Electoral Commission, maybe under Afarajan, no matter what you do,
institutions that everybody trusts.
Yes, we will come to a certain conclusion that a lot of people will agree with, and that's fine. But when we have a situation, especially from the last election, where we understand results were changed, the results, factually were erroneous on the number of occasions, were corrected, etc. Press releases issued here and there to correct figures, etc. That is a problem. So what you want to do for such an institution is to grow the confidence and trust of Ghanaians in that institution. You don't erode the confidence by appointing partisan or party functionaries to that body. It is wrong. You see, so what we are doing to the institutions of our country is that we are politicizing every institution in the name of political smartness, because the people will be there for a long time and their tenures are guaranteed by the Constitution. So they'll be there for a long time, and so they will serve your interest for a long time. And we've seen that allegation made also about appointments to the Supreme Court, for example. So there's a gentleman who is competent by all standards, who one of the two Supreme Court nominees that Parliament had issues with, who was a parliamentary candidate for the MPP in the Volta region. Nothing to take away from him in terms of his competence. Yeah. But the fact that he appeared on the ballot paper and you are moving such a person to the Supreme Court, that raises a lot of issues. That matter really hadn't died, then now you go and do another set of appointments with the same problems. I think our president must sometimes listen to the generality of the people. I don't know who advises him or whose advice he takes. I'm not sure about the Council of State. But we need to be careful. And you see, and it's about time people spoke up. And I've said here before, that until the middle class, rises on its feet and speaks about issues, we will continue to be here. Kodio has spoken, and Kodio is no mean organization. Kodio has a lot of credibility, a lot of respect with a lot of, people who understand our electoral process on it. Alex Ahin and a few others. Reverend Degbe, who's been General Secretary of the Ghana Christian Council for as long as I could remember. They have spoken, and they say that it is wrong. All these people including those who haven't spoken, but who have said things, you know, in silence they can all not be wrong. But this action on the face of it, and in fact, is wrong. You don't appoint party activists, party communicators, party patrons to a body like the Electoral Commission, which has a very delicate role in our very polarized country. We don't have to continue doing this to ourselves. I think people must tell the president that he needs to pull the brakes. And talking about the guys resigning, it's unfortunate we don't have that culture in Ghana. Why should he resign when he has hit his jackpot? Nobody will resign. Nobody will resign. The call is great by Kodio, but they will not resign. Because in fact, if they resign, they would have disappointed the president. Because it would mean that the president didn't know what he was doing. There is no place for personal principle in our country today. There is no place for personal principle. Everything is about loyalty to a party cause. Everything is about personal interest and party interest. There is absolutely nothing for national interest. If it were so, these two people whose names have come up will resign. Thankfully, the Reverend's name hasn't really come up because, I mean, the Reverend is a Reverend, and as far as we know, she does her work and she does it well. But these two other people who have been pointed out, and indeed, whose record have shown that they have been engaged in political party activity, I think, I don't even know how to say it, whether they should resign or the president should revoke their appointment. But it is one of the bad things that has happened to this country of ours. And you see, if we don't take care, a lot of other key institutions of our country will be politicized this way, and we will not be making progress. When you appoint party people to the EC, when NDC comes, you want them to go and appoint which people? They also bring their party communicators to be on the EC. You do me, I do you, and will we be building our country? No.
Can you imagine the NDC coming to power and, you know, General Mosquito is appointed as chairperson of the Electoral Commission, or Fifi Kwete is named the chairperson of the Electoral Commission,
I won't
or
imagine.
Dr. Tony Edu.
I won't imagine.
So,
and with this, that can happen. And in our policies of equalization, it will be done. And when you question it, they will refer you to this.
So
that when this happened, you didn't talk. And when it was wrong, you didn't say anything. Why is this wrong? Why are you complaining? And that is what we are doing to our democracy.
And in fact, when I was initiating that suit, and some of the arguments that we made, you know, was that the Council of State actually should own the process, invite people interested in the job. There should be an interview conducted, and then they determine, you know, who is qualified to serve in the position. The process should be transparent. It should not be limited to the confines of the presidency. He nominates, and then, you know, the president, the reference is made to the Council of State, and then they look at it and come back with some advice, which advice he's at liberty to ignore if he thinks that, you know, the advice doesn't serve his purpose. I think we should look. Not everything should be partisan in this country. Do you know the name of the person who is responsible for conducting elections in the UK? No. How about the US? No. Because these issues, you know, don't come up. You understand? Of course, I mean, there are state level issues where they say, oh, this Democrat, you know, but
the ultimate,
it's
not all.
We cannot just politicize every single space. Very soon, they will be charging you. If you are an NPP person, they will say, okay, you are entitled to, you know, to breathe in oxygen. If you are NDC, you will not get some. We cannot continue like that.
Okay.
There are institutions that are sacred, and we must keep them as such. The partisanship is just bad. Now that they've been appointed, they have security of tenure until something so bad happens as to compel someone to go to the president and say, I have a petition, remove them from office. So what happens? It's a very, very, very bitter pill to swallow. And as others have said, maybe it's up to their conscience.
Well, we'll see what comes. But we are told that the Reverend was appointed, also an appointee of John Mahama. She was actually deputy CEO of BOST at the time. So you know.
Deputy CEO of BOST.
Yes. So we have to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll wrap up.
So they use that to balance
We'll wrap up the issue on the passage. I'll allow you to.
So they use that to balance it more.
I'm taking a break. This is what the papers are saying. I'm here with Richard Sky and Stella Madonna. When we come back, we'll look at the passage of the 3 new revenue bills and how it will affect all of us. Please stay with us. We'll be right back.
City TV is live on DSTV. Go to channel 363. On GoTV, access City TV on channel 182. On a digital TV, please press the menu button on the remote control and run a new search on your TV. Take note that without an antenna, you cannot access City TV on your television. City TV can be accessed on a free-to-air digital box like the GoTV and StarTimes box. City TV, it's your world.
So you're welcome back to what the papers are saying. My name is Vivian Kai. Look, I'm here with Richard Sky as well as Stella Madonna. We'll wrap up with the passage of the 3 new taxes, some revenue taxes. Sky, you were following that story from day one. You were there till it was passed and all that. Now, we've seen following the passage, almost every business association protesting, against the passage on the impact on their business, on loss of jobs, and every other thing that will have a negative impact on, this bill that has been passed on the living conditions and everything else. Maybe government should have waited in passing these bills, whether IMF or whatever it was.
Well, we don't buy the story, and I'm very certain about this, that we don't buy the story that if we did not pass this, we're not going to get an IMF support. I think that's just some cop-out that's been used. It's just a hook that has been used to get us to toe the line. Unfortunately, I reject that. The reason being what? We have repeatedly spoken about how to realign government, how to cut the size of government. And in fact, Senyo Hosi and his team, together with the folks at the Ministry of Finance, did a fantastic work, which work returned, a verdict that said what? We could save in excess of 80 billion Ghana cedis if we were to realign our government and cut costs in specific areas. How much is 4 billion if you put that in an ocean of 80 billion Ghana cedis? So I just don't understand why a government that came to office criticizing the former administration that they were lazy, all they knew was to borrow. All they knew, was to go to Parliament and ask Parliament to impose new taxes on the people. I mean, just recently, I remember there was a tweet that I sent out from Parliament about new taxes that had been passed by the I think it was the Mahama administration at the time. And apparently the Minister for Information now responded to that tweet and basically blasting the government that they should stop this whole business of... Exactly. People went and dig that thing. They went to dig it up. And they are now using it to respond to how this government is handling the citizens of this country. I think it is an insult to the people that you promise them that, oh, look, you are going to run this country to the glory of God, and that, their lives will be better. And then you come, and left, right, center, we are being slapped with taxes. You saw the notices that are flying over from the ports.
Yeah.
The ports are almost empty. People are not bringing things in, because if you look at the burden of taxes that you will be slapped with, it doesn't make sense to import things into this country. And yes, we are talking about import substitution, but the fact too is that there are intermediate goods and raw materials that we cannot make do with. And of course, there are also finished goods that we do not have in this country. So, willingly, we must bring them into the country. But with all of these things happening, people don't have disposable incomes in their pockets because, haircut has come in and all kinds of things have happened to swallow their resources. And taxes are coming in to create further problems. Job losses are happening. You go to the banks, people are unsettled as to whether their job is still safe. They go to sleep, they are worried about whether by the time they wake up tomorrow, they still have a job. And it's happening in industry. I think that really the president can decide not to sign the assent to the legislation. And as we know under Article 106 of the Constitution...
But you know in this case, he will sign it.
Oh, no. You see, if he decides not to sign it, he can whip his people into line. And when they take a second vote on it, they will not have the 2/3 majority required to pass it through. And therefore, there will not be technically...
to justify why this thing should be passed. It's obviously coming from the top, and then they are pushing it through.
We are saying that, yes, you made that argument, but there is a better view. Which view is what? That save for the Republic. Cut the ministries down. Cut the various offices that are needless in the system down. And at least, even if you make 5 billion Ghana cedis in savings, that's good enough. We do not need then these taxes. But the counter-argument is made that, we are also trying to cut down on the consumption
they've started making, they say, efforts to cut down on expenditure.
No,
and some of
I don't buy it.
Some of the things have to be done. For example, there's a broken bridge at Three Town, which means people cannot move from Three Town to Accra. You put on hold, that.
Have you
I'm just
used
giving an example.
Have you used
put on hold that you will fix
recently?
You will fix that bridge because we are saying that cut down on expenditure. So these capital they still have to go ahead with it.
You see, the people who did the work on the expenditure, they reference specific items, the size of government, some of the payments that are made. All these things have been listed properly. And if our ministers were reading these documents, they will come to a conclusion that these guys did a fantastic job. And therefore, they will take the input that they have made and run with it. 4 billion Ghana cedis. Industry is already struggling. And yet you insist you want to collect that. I think the president should not sign it and provide reasons to Parliament as to why he would not. In line with the provisions of the Constitution.
Okay. So, sorry, you have just 1 minute.
I think the president will sign this, guys.
He will sign it.
If he's not signing it, the president will sign it. I think we have, we've given this president everything he needs. And I'm not even sure how the hung parliament is working. Everything this president has needed in this hung parliament, we have given him. He said he needed e-levy, else the economy was going to collapse. We gave him e-levy. Whether the e-levy helped the economy or not, we don't know. He said he wanted new ministers to help him do the job. We gave it to him. Now he said he wants new taxes, 3 new taxes, else the economy will collapse. We gave it to him. Everything he actually wants, we give it to him. But what do we see? We do not see any improvement in the economy. I think what the government, or led by the president, must do is to look within itself. The solution is there. There's some 27 or 21 billion cedis in the budget for capex, capital expenditure. That is important. For example, you don't need to build 111 hospitals, now. Of course, we didn't have 111 hospitals, but COVID came, we tried. You can build some of them, but you don't say that at all costs, you are going to build 111 hospitals when we do not have money for other things. That is misplaced priority. There are so many things this government is expending money on which are not very important, but they are only politically expedient because they want to have things to their name so that in the next election, they can point to things and say, we built this hospital, we did that, at the expense of the welfare of people. So now you brought in 3 new taxes, which are going to affect everything. Look at the banks, for example. They've done DDE, debt exchange program. The banks are already in deep trouble. You've now introduced this other tax, which is going to impose a 5%, tax, profit before tax, going to tax their profit before tax. You know, and you are not even thinking about what the DD is doing to them already. Some of the banks were about 60-70% exposed to government bonds, and now that has happened. You don't even know how they are going to survive. You've now exposed a 5% tax on their profit before tax. That is cruelty, and so many other things without thinking about what the ordinary person will go through. That is very disappointing, to say the least.
Okay, well, we'll see. Well, we will know he will sign it, though. But let's see. Anything can happen.
If he's not signing it.
But thank you, guys. Our time is
Pascal,
far
you
gone.
will sign it. You take it back to Parliament.
As well as
if he's a listening
the last guy.
president.
My name is Vivian Kai. Look, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you again next week.